Yes. So just 1 second, sharing this. So as I think all of you know, this is the famous this is the costume that has become more famous than any fashion store, than anything in this last 1 year. This is called the PPE, the personal protective equipment, the most purposeful attire or costume, if you have to say, the real Batman or the Iron Man within. We have learned a lot in that PPE, and yeah, so. And this has been the one costume which has protected both of them, touch wood, and kept them safe while dealing with these patients. Yes. So the first question which I think came up, and so we've done the intro. Yes. So what is a jumbo COVID center, guys, or what is a COVID center right now? So right. Can you just give an idea to the people? Yeah, thank you. Sure. So given that Mumbai's population density is very high, and there are a lot of people who stay in slums or chawls in the setup where they share bathrooms, common bathrooms, it's very important to ensure safe isolation if someone tests positive. And that's why the government of India started, at least in Mumbai, they started with this facility, which entails a couple of COVID centers across the city. Approximately 5,000 beds it caters to, and from what we have seen, our experience has been they are extremely clean, hygienic, and some of them have been built in very short span duration also. The beautiful thing about this has been that, you know, we have all, like, I've met Vani there, and we've met a lot of people working together, a lot of medicos working together for one cause. And that's about the Jumbo COVID Center. The best part of this whole thing is it's free of cost by the government. So that's the very important part here. Vani, you'd like to add something?
Yes. So I would like to tell that how did Shruti and I join the center. So this basically there are a lot of people over here. We are about 150 nurses. We have around 250 doctors. This includes both consultants and the junior doctors who are the resident medical officers. We also have a lot of tertiary staff like the ward boys, technicians, and so in total we have an employment of almost 600 people. And of course, there's the most important administrative part of it.
And that's just one center, right?
And this is just one center. This is just one center. There are, I believe, some 6 or 7 centers yes. all across Mumbai. So there are various ways that one can join. You can either join as a volunteer, which is, I think, one of the most unselfish and noblest thing that most of the doctors and nurses are doing. Other part is you can join directly through BMC. If you're attached to a BMC hospital, either you're posted by your own department or you can join yourself. You can volunteer again. And then there's something called as DMER, that is Directorate of Medical Research and Education. So they give a 1-month post to various doctors. So we had a form circulating, and which many of us have filled. And that's another way that you can join in these centers. And of course, we do get paid for the work we are putting in.
Absolutely. So Vani, I think you have an interesting story here. So just a bit of storytelling. Vani, how did you end up joining personally?
Yeah, so I was in Boston from February, and I went there for a fellowship in Harvard. And unfortunately, wow. Unfortunately, everything went down the drain, in the sense my academics couldn't be pursued because of COVID. So I was sitting at home. Luckily, I had a nice home with my sister. But, you know, sitting there and hearing about COVID and the situation in the country, the whole purpose of becoming a doctor was to help out the people of my country, which I couldn't do. So every single day was a day when I was waiting to come back to work in COVID. So I requested the Indian Embassy to get me in the Vande Bharat mission flight. So the moment I got back to India, and during my 2 weeks of quarantine, I started applying, and I got through in one of these places. They all need doctors desperately. And day 16th, I was working. I was employed in the center.
Wow. And since then, that was which day? Date?
Yeah, so 11th of July is when I started working here.
July, August, September, and you're going strong. Excellent.
So that's so inspiring.
Yeah, really, Shruti, you can tell your story as well, please.
Yeah, so I was called in. So what happened way back in April, we had been, there was a circular or a Google form that was circulated amongst doctors, all doctors, Ayurvedic doctors, homeopaths, MBBS, to fill in and volunteer that if there is a need in the future, are you willing to give your services for the same? So I had filled that form and I received an email about down the line in July. And I got a verification call and then I had to join in. So it was, that's how I joined in.
Excellent. So yeah, and since then, the work has been going on brilliantly. I think we'll just stop sharing the PPT for once. And this is a very important question which came, and so that people can see you more than just actually just see the PPT. A very important question is, and I think a question which many of our viewers have here is that, okay, so let's go through the entire process, the actual process of me maybe having symptoms, or me having the fear that okay, I think I might have COVID, and that anxiety, or a symptom like maybe a dry cough, or maybe a low grade fever for a day or two. From there, how do you enter this Jumbo COVID center as a patient? What happens? So can both of you just throw a bit of light on that? Thanks.
Sure. So with respect to symptoms, it could be three of so many symptoms that I'm going to enlist now. It could be body ache, fever, low grade fever usually from 3 to 5
low grade
days.
Fever
low grade fever means around 99 to 100, not above 100 usually. So it could be body ache, fever, headache, some cough, or just a sensation in the throat, gale mein khich khich. Also, it could be just that also, but with cough also, or with or without breathlessness, and weakness. Loss of taste and appetite can also happen. So now 3 or more of these can happen. There are also patients who don't have symptoms at all. But they get tested positive because they have to do it as a protocol for joining job, or before they have to travel, or before an operation. So that's when we see the asymptomatic patients, means those who don't have any symptoms. Now, if you have these symptoms and you have been in touch with someone who has been tested positive, who later on tested positive, you came to know that later, or you are someone above 55, 60 years of age with comorbidities. When I say comorbidities, I mean blood pressure, diabetes, asthma, any other pre-existing lung conditions. In those cases, it's better to get yourself tested, because it's a very simple process right now. You don't need a prescription anymore to get tested here currently.
Tested means the swab.
The swab test.
Right.
For getting the swab test done, which is right now the gold standard test. So let's come to the testing part of it. So there are 3 major tests. One is the swab test. The swab test is the RT-PCR, which takes about 2 to 5 days, 2 to 3 days, not 5 days, 2 to 3 days for the result to come. But it is the gold standard by what doctors are going now. If that is positive, means it is positive. That is negative, means you are negative.
And both of you have actually done these swab tests, right? So
Yes.
It's been absolutely, it didn't hurt you. It didn't.
No. It's, I would say, a discomfort feeling, but it just lasts for those one or 2 seconds. That's about it.
So no problem in doing it.
No.
It's just, they just take a swab from your throat or from your nostril, and you might feel a tickly sensation. You might sneeze. Neither of us had it, but I know of people who have felt it, but that's all, nothing else. After that, you don't even realize that this is a test for COVID.
Right.
So, so that's about the RT-PCR. That takes about between 24 hours to 3 days for the report to come, but it is the confirmed test by which we go. Now the next is the rapid antigen, which is also a swab test, but its report comes within 30 minutes. Now, this, however, if it comes negative, is not necessary that you are negative for sure. So what they have recommended, ICMR has recommended that if you come negative, if the rapid antigen comes negative and you don't have any symptoms, then you don't need to do RT-PCR. However, if your rapid antigen comes negative and you have symptoms, then you need to do an RT-PCR to confirm that you're negative, so that if in case you're positive, you don't miss it out. So that's about rapid antigen. They are using rapid antigen more so for people, for places where which are containment zones, so they can quickly check at least some positive cases.
And the third test, what is
the third test is the antibody test, which is a blood test. There are two types of antibodies that can be detected. So just a quick this about it. When you develop an infection, immediate response creates IgM antibodies, and then the body creates chronic memory cells to develop long-term antibodies, which are IgG. So either of them are done in case as per the need in every case. Now this does not necessarily, only if IgM is positive, that is the acute phase, you know that, okay, right now your body is fighting the too many medical jargon. So please.
So sure. So I think we'll just pause here. We've been going on in a drone monotone for the last 10 minutes. So just quickly opening it up. We've got 60 participants. Anyone, any questions on the testing portion? Please don't feel shy. You can ask now. See, again, this is a virus which everyone is still researching. There are thousands of articles, journals, news, WhatsApp getting published, and multiple views about it. We will try to answer it from what we know, and in case we don't know the answer, we will try and get back with some kind of basis to whatever information we share. Maybe may not tie up with multiple sources of information, but right now we'll just pause for 2 minutes. In case anyone has any questions about these tests, please feel free. So yeah, just quickly repeating the three tests.
So there is the first is the RT-PCR, which is the gold standard, which is the main test. It's also a swab test. That takes about 2 to 3 days for the report to come. And then going to the next is a rapid antigen test, rapid indicating the report comes quicker within 30 minutes. And however, the accuracy is not, if it's negative, you may have to repeat if you have symptoms. And the third one is the antibody test, which is a blood test.
Sure. So the question is, what is the accuracy of these tests? So Vani, any view on that?
So for RT-PCR, that is a swab test. If it is positive, then it is positive, but there are false negatives. So 30% of the test could be false negative. So when we do have such patients come to us, then we use our clinical judgment. So this is what differentiates, being a doctor from being someone who has not been practicing medicine. So I think that's about it. So there are multiple tests as it goes for most of the illnesses that we have. Tests are there which help a doctor, but our clinical acumen precedes over everything else.
Correct. And when you're talking of a clinical entire picture, when you're talking about X-ray, CT scan, symptoms, their contact history with any patient, and right? And
the symptology, of course, yeah.
Correct.
We make a note of all the symptoms. There's a detailed evaluation done for each and every person. And
right.
And the cases are divided according to the World Health Organization. They have given 3 case list that is based on severity. So you could be a mild case, a moderate case, or a severe case. So the treatment protocols has been laid down accordingly. And in our city of Mumbai, in our jumbo centers, we follow those protocols, but we have, I wouldn't say manipulate, but we have customized it to the population over here because we see a little different picture over here. So yeah, and we are getting good results on a positive note.
Right.
Sure. We're getting quite a few questions, just quickly going through them. So one question is, why does it take 33 days, 2 to 3 days for the result to come?
Is it a procedural time or backlog delays?
Okay, so this test basically, RT-PCR is basically amplification of the RNA of the virus. So as you know, there are a lot of viruses going on otherwise, but we don't usually test someone for influenza or other viruses in our country. So this is a very different kind of test. So this machine was ideally not available in a lot of hospitals or a lot of clinics and labs. And now with this, many have procured. Now they could have either a capacity of 8, 16, or as much as 98 also. When the swabs can be put in that, the RNA is segregated, it is amplified, and then that value of the RNA is what is also prognostic factor. So why it takes time is because firstly, we don't have many places. This is when I'm talking about a metropolitan city of Mumbai, where we have only few labs which have this, and the caseload, as you know, is in thousands. So that is a reason for the delay, and it is there is backlog, yes, but to be frank, these labs are working overtime
Absolutely.
24/7,
That
and
we
they're doing a brilliant job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
So quick question, is swab taken from nostril or mouth or both? I think what is the
Ideally, perfect way to do is to take it from the oropharynx, that is mouth, back of your oral cavity, from back of your nose. And I mean, both of them are the best part. But there are exceptions if someone is very old, or if they have some pre-existing nasal condition, it's a little difficult to do. So the oral cavity one will suffice as well.
Sure. Next question quickly. I think I'm running through the questions. They're coming soon, quick, thick and fast. The patient is shown positive in one hospital, negative in another hospital. What's the reason? Same, I think that's the
Yes. Yeah, that's what the tests are not 100% foolproof. And also it could be like the viral load could have reduced enough, or
Right.
the patient would have turned negative. And also it's important to know that a person can be tested positive even after the illness has subsided, because the dead RNA of the virus resides in the body. So after you have contracted the infection for as long as 3 to 5 weeks, you could still test positive.
Okay, thanks. Amazing. The next question is, what's the accuracy of the blood test? That's the antibody, sorry.
The antibody testing is more of knowing that you have attained the infection or not. And the recent studies have shown that mild cases haven't really been developing antibodies. So if you have them, then you can be sure of the fact that you have got the infection. But to remind you, this is not a foolproof that you won't get it again. Unfortunately, there has been research that patients can contract it 3 months later. So we don't rely on the antibody testing too much as of now.
Perfect. Symptoms can be one or many in a person to be tested. I think we spoke about that. They can be zero, they can be 3, they can be more. Symptoms. There are many people who are asymptomatic also. So that's actually not the, I would say, the standard of checking. The next question is, can an asymptomatic patient turn symptomatic when he enters a COVID center? I think nice question.
Okay. Yeah, so asymptomatic person, that would make that person a mild case. So they can turn in, having symptoms doesn't mean that they contract COVID from the patient in the next bed. That doesn't happen. But what can happen is, which happens in all illnesses, is hospital acquired infection. So you already have low immunity and you are in a space in a containment zone. So you can develop secondary bacterial infection. So that is why Dr. Shruti has mentioned about having comorbidities or not having them. So someone who has comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, you are more prone to having those secondary infections. So no, being next to a symptomatic patient doesn't make you get the symptoms.
I think, and the important portion here, and again, you can correct me, is that that's where a jumbo COVID center helps, because when you join itself, I think we can bring in the point saying when you join itself, there's a complete testing done of each person, right?
Yeah, so the basic tests are done. The important thing here to add is that the question, if it meant that if 2 COVID patients are in one room and one person's viral load is higher than the other, will there be this? That does not happen. So secondary added infections, you can get some other infections, but this cannot like worsen the situation as such.
And you're treating all of that, right?
Yeah, everything is being treated. So the blood test, the X-ray, they are repeated as and when necessary, and that is taken care of. And medicines are constantly monitored and changed whenever
we enter the center. So we have So we have 3 categories of wards. Okay, so we do have suspect wards as well. So in case you have not got yourself tested outside and you have symptoms, or you have been in contact with someone very closely who has had COVID. So in that case, you do get admitted in a suspect ward, and then the swab is done the following morning, and then the result comes, and whatever the result is, either it is positive or negative, the action is taken accordingly. The second category of rooms that we have is COVID positive on oxygen. And the third one is COVID positive not on oxygen. That means they are on room air. So those are the 3 categories. So maybe the doubt that you have whether a severe and a mild or a moderate case are kept together, they are not. All the severe cases are in oxygen wards. The mild ones and moderate ones are in non-oxygenated, and a suspect stays in a suspect ward.
Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much. Next question is, when does one come to know that we need to get ourselves tested? Supposing someone has fever, lasts for a few days, does that mean they should get tested?
That's only for a day. So that's where it's important to keep a doctor in the loop. I think the moment you get any symptoms, it's important to keep a doctor informed and constantly engaged, so that because then we can take into consideration the entire symptomatology and then decide, right, Vani?
Exactly. So it is a clinical acumen which helps. It's nothing. I don't think it's a very standardized thing. I can't say that one episode of fever of 99 means you have
Exactly.
COVID, because the other illnesses haven't disappeared from the world. They are still there. So we need to
Right.
have a clinical acumen and be able to diagnose the person and tell, yes, you do. It's better if you get tested. And no, I don't think. I think you can wait it out and see how it goes.
Next. Sorry. Yeah. So, okay. No, we'll come to that at the end. We'll just finish off the questions because should a healthy person with no symptom take the antibody test? If positive, that means the person has gained immunity towards COVID. I think I personally had asked this question. I was looking to be a plasma donor actually, personally, and I was hoping that I could take the test, have somehow gained, means had COVID, never realized it, hopefully never spread it, and then maybe now that I have the antibodies, I can help donate it through plasma. Was my point, but I don't think that's
so if you don't need to do, see, you can do it if you have this kind of thinking that you want to know
help.
if you have the antibody so that you can donate. Yeah, but if it comes positive, if IG, the chronic thing comes positive, it means that you have had the infection in the last couple of months and you have fought it, and you can, but does not mean that
then you can throw the mask away.
Yeah, but you'll probably need to do a swab test to know if you currently also have it, and so that you can decide, you can plan on the quarantine part of it.
Yes.
But nothing to be worried about. It's a good thing because your immunity has fought it already.
Perfect. Next question: can a COVID positive patient turn positive again? Now, reinfection is something which is I think a new. It's the fresh this thing. What do you call it? Place of WhatsApp, right? It's something which is being discussed, being understood. I think something which is again leaving it to you.
No, but I think as Vani mentioned already that after 3 months you have to, means it's seen that you can get reinfected and it's possible. Even the 3 months you have to continue to take all the precautions as you have been taking.
The problem with viruses is they mutate way faster than any bacteria or parasite does. So that is why if you realize, we don't have an influenza shot. Influenza is the most common cause of common cold for centuries. But in India, we have the shot, but it's not, we don't take it, do we? I'm sure amongst 60 of us, barely 2-3 would have taken. But why not? Because the virus mutates really fast. That's the same thing. COVID is a virus and it mutates. It doesn't mean that we need to be worried about it and we need to be really scared about it. So, well, it's a virus. We are beating it and we will continue to do so.
So next question is, one of my friend tested positive without any symptoms. Is there possibility that she might be negative? Yeah, no, it can go either way, right? False positive, false negatives, both are possible. But I think if you test positive through the RT-PCR, you should consider you're positive.
Yes. Even the antigen testing, if you're positive, that means you could be mild, so that doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yes.
I think the next question was the same, and I think the antibody test. Okay, good question is specific precautions to be taken while traveling intercity.
So firstly, one should avoid traveling as much as possible. But of course, it's been months now. You cannot really stop doing the work you're doing, or for any other emergency situations if you need to travel. Wear a mask, of course, yes. Try and maintain distance if you can. Wash your hands, keep it sanitized, and make sure because there's one aspect of you getting the infection, other is you spreading it yourself. So as long as you are taking the basic cautions which have been spoken about for months now, that is good enough.
Nice.
Apart from that, your supplements can be continued.
Next question, I think an interesting one, which will be very pertinent to the COVID center, is that if a person is discharged from hospital, but the virus is active for 3 to 5 weeks, can that person be a carrier? No,
So once he discharged, that's why we advise them to quarantine themselves for another 2 weeks, 10 days, 10 to 14 days, and then see the viral load reduces by itself. So then you the chances of you spreading it is very, very, very minimal.
We do advise strict isolation once the patient gets discharged. So it could be for 10 to 14 days. And to be more confident of coming out, many patients do prefer to get a home swab test done. And once negative, they're confident to come out because they don't want to spread it to the household members and society. Yeah.
I think exactly that's what you did, right? You did a swab test so that you could, after kind of completing one round of
Right.
it.
So after I finished with my duty, I did a swab test so that I could know if I had to isolate further or I am I'm free. So that's why I did the test and
It came
negative. Next question.
Sorry, second. Why do some people take longer to turn negative than other people? Is it because of low immunity or stamina or what?
So it depends on the viral load. So that is how you, if you are a severe case, it does take longer time because you were probably been on oxygen for a long time. And also someone who is already, like as you mentioned, low immunity, that would be if you are a diabetic or if you had diseases which has reduced your immunity over the years. Yes, you will take a little longer time. And that is expected, that is happening, but that doesn't mean that it is, a very bad prognosis. It just has to be taken in a special care has to be given to such patients. That's about it.
Perfect. How can we differentiate between flu and COVID? I think beautiful question.
Yeah. So, I mean, they are both viruses. They both have very similar symptoms. But common cold or common flu does not really have fever. I think that is one of the differentiating symptoms. And of course, there is loss of taste, smell, even diarrhea is also a symptom of COVID. And something which lasts for anything flu magnified is probably COVID.
Correct. Often use of sanitizer can it cause any skin issues. So in people who do have pre-existing skin issues, yes, absolutely it can worsen
Peels your hands.
I would suggest you wear gloves which are
nitrile gloves, right?
Yeah, which are
powder-free gloves,
powder-free gloves which are not irritable, and use them instead of constantly washing your hands. And even if you don't have any pre-existing skin conditions, I've seen it actually causing corrosion. So don't overuse a sanitizer also, and don't drink too hot water since that helps, but don't drink it like too hot and constantly, because I've seen people actually burning their throats just because of drinking too hot water.
And also I would say that one thing which I think they have been speaking about is also what quality of sanitizer are you using? Because there are 500 new brands and startups which have started selling. Everyone's creating a sanitizer now. And
I think the best part is just wash your hands with running water and soap. That is the best thing. So, you have been using soaps on a daily basis. Of course, when you're traveling and you don't have access to fresh water at that point, or soap, sanitizers do help. So, there are a lot of sanitizers, a lot of companies. There are some which are really homemade and pure alcohol based, which have very bad smell to them as well. Bottom line, they all work well. So anything which suits you and which suits your pocket as well.
Thank you. Anyway, small question. Is it true that if your antibody test is adequate, your RT-PCR test being positive doesn't matter? I think that's read differently, right? I think I've got that as a private question, Vani. You wouldn't be able to read that.
Okay. Can you repeat the question?
Is it true that if your antibody test is adequate, your RT-PCR being positive doesn't matter on a low viral load?
So there are two types of antibodies. There are the ones which come immediately and the ones which come later. So it could be possible that, you have developed the immediate one. So as I said, we don't really do antibody testing, nor do we rely on it so much as of now. So if you're tested positive, if you have low viral load, then that is really good thing. You have mild symptoms and you're going to recover. So we will be treating you as a COVID positive, and most importantly is isolate this particular person so that they don't spread.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, because even if you have the antibodies, you can still infect others, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one question I think, which is a generic question, is how do you want to take precautionary measures with the current rate of infection? I think something we'll come to at the end. Let Vani just take a sip of water. She's been talking like crazy. She's been giving her 4 months of crash course experience in that. So thanks a lot, Vani, for that. I think we'll move on with she's come through. Okay, Dr. Naseem, are you? Can you just unmute yourself, please? I think we can see you. Yes, ma'am. Hi. So, Dr. Naseem, can you just give us a quick introduction about the work that you're doing, and just for everyone? So, just quickly from my side, Dr. Naseem is one of those amazing COVID warriors who is front-ending this entire plasma donation side of helping patients and curing them. And I think which is something which personally I have hoped I could do someday. Not that I need to be COVID positive for that. Sorry about that.
I hope not. I hope not. You need to be COVID positive.
So
hope you don't get it.
Yeah, understood, Dr. Naseem. But yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, can you, if it would just help, one more thing. Sorry to tell you this, but your camera is like your face.
Yeah.
Can you just turn it?
I know it's very dark.
Yeah, ma'am. So
let me just.
Yeah, much better, ma'am.
Yeah.
So I'll just give you. Yeah, the stage is set for you. Maybe you can. We've got around 65 participants. People from all kinds of strata of society. We've got people right from UK, South Africa, India, all parts of India. So really a nice audience, ma'am. Please, do you need me to show your screen, or would you like to just speak to the crowd?
No, I am just good speaking.
Thank you so much.
So I think everybody now knows everything about COVID and everything about plasma. I mean, we're all experts now, reading the papers, reading WhatsApp, the WhatsApp University. So plasma is, it's basically passive immunity, right? So when anybody recovers from COVID, or when you recover from any disease, you're exposed to any disease, you develop antibodies towards that disease. It's like when you get a vaccine in your childhood and you start developing antibodies. Now, these antibodies are present in the plasma. That's the liquid portion of the blood. I mean, this is for lay people, right? And once a patient has recovered, so past, say, about 1 month post that, the antibodies, the level starts peaking, and that stays for a few months. Now, if we can take those antibodies and we can give it to people who are suffering, who are in hospital, right? It helps them. Now, it's not a sure shot miracle cure. But if it's given in mild cases, in moderate cases, we've seen it prevents them from going into the critical phase. So I think that's a big plus, right? So, and we have lakhs of people who have recovered. Lakhs and lakhs of people who have recovered.
Absolutely.
If we can come forward, give you plasma, it doesn't take anything from you. Plasma is regenerated every 48 hours. It's not the blood cells. So therefore, plasma donors can donate every 15 days. Blood donation happens every 3 months because you take time to recover. The blood cells need to be generated again in the body, right? But plasma is generated so fast, and antibodies obviously are regenerated. The minute you get an attack again, the antigen, the response is more antibodies are produced, right? So correct. I think people need to be aware of this, because the main thing is, I'm going to become weak. I'm giving away my antibodies. But that is a fear. That is a huge fear. Another thing is, they say, we are going to go back into that same hospital. So if we're going to go back into that same hospital, we are going to get infected again. We'll bring it back to our people. Again, it's a very valid fear. I mean, they've come out of COVID. It's a big thing. We can understand. But understand two things. One is that you're somewhat immune at this point. You have the antibodies. Secondly, this happens in a blood bank. You're not going into the COVID wards. You're going into the blood bank. And that is the safest, the most sterile part of the hospital, right? So if people should understand these two things. Now, there is also certain criteria. So if we have, say, 100 people who have recovered, a lot of them are ineligible just on the basis of this criteria. So we have the age criteria, 18 to 60 only. a large chunk of the population goes out because we need only nulliparous women. That is, women who have never been pregnant, okay, at any time in their life, even a miscarriage, or if you have a 30-year-old son also, sorry, you're out. No chronic diseases, hypertension, diabetes, obviously something like cancer, HIV, anything. If you had recent surgery, you cannot donate. If you had a recent tattoo, you cannot donate. So minor things, right? But still, I think we can have a very large population of people who can donate. And there are blood banks all over the city right now. So all it takes is a couple of hours of your time, right? So there's a pre-testing which is done, in which the hemoglobin is tested. You need to be of a certain weight. You need to be above 50 kgs. Your hemoglobin needs to be above 12.5. So they test all these factors. They test for the 3 H's, HCV, HIV, HBsAg. They test your antibody titers. Only if it's well above the limit are they going to take the plasma. Otherwise, they're not going to take your plasma. So the pre-testing is done, and then you're called in for the plasma donation. It just takes about 2 hours because the blood is taken out, the plasma is separated, and the blood cells are returned to the body of the donor. This happens in the blood bank. Therefore, it happens in the blood bank. Therefore, we can't have blood donation camps. We can't have plasma donation camps like we have for blood, which would be so easy. You just go in and donate your blood and come out. But we can't have that because it's a very specialized machine. So blood cells are returned to the donor. So even that part, you don't lose your strength. You don't lose your hemoglobin because your cells are coming back.
Yes, ma'am.
And
yeah, just a question, ma'am. Here is that. So from one plasma donation, so how many people, is there some count, like how many people can be helped?
2 people.
Wow.
Right? Because you collect, when we do, we take plasma, we take 400 ml, and one patient is given 200 units, 200 ml as 1 unit of plasma.
And can you,
so one donor helps 2 people.
Sure.
Right?
And can you share some like real life experiences just for the sake of everyone, that how have people been helped? I'm sure you must have seen so many, right? That's why you're driving this.
Yes. So we started off initially, with the ICMR trial. So Nair Hospital had started the ICMR trial, and they were not getting enough donors because the same thing, people were scared. So they wanted doctors to talk to them, to reassure them, to tell them about the facts of plasma donation. Because everyone thinks blood donation. Nobody knows what plasma is. So we started with that. So now it's been about 4 months, but we have seen a lot of people coming out of it. We have seen people not going on the ventilator, but initially what happened, because there was a dearth of plasma, it was used as the last resort. When people were critical on the ventilator, and then we would find out if, sometime that, the patient expired. And it's very demotivating, not only for us, but even for the donor. But I think gradually doctors have also realized that, yes, let's start using it earlier, not when the patient is on the ventilator, right? This is to prevent the patient going onto the ventilator. And yes, it has shown results. We have had patients coming back to us and said, okay, after so much time, we have gone home.
Wow, very nice, very nice. Anyone, just quickly, if anyone wants to have any specific question about the plasma donation piece, you can quickly type it on Zoom. Dr. Naseem also has a short timeline. She has a few personal commitments, so she will need to drop off in the next 10-15 minutes. So anyone quickly, if any questions on plasma, she'll be happy to answer them.
You can unmute yourselves as well and just ask.
Quickly ask it. Yep. Ma'am, also what we'll be doing
wanting to register. Okay, one thing is that we have now started. Initially, we started with people just calling us and giving the details, and then we would try and source donors from various sites and direct them to blood banks. Now we've set up a website. So this is, I'm part of an organization called Mumbai Dharkan. It's a group of NGOs, and we've been working right through the pandemic, with various fields. So Mumbai Dharkan has set up this website called Plasma Dona. not
Beautiful.
donor,
Play of
DONA,
words.
plasma donor.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
plasmadonor.org. So you just patients register and donors register. So then we have a record. And what we're trying to do in the future is not only go pan India, but also try and match the donors to the recipients.
That's
So,
amazing.
the third party comes out of it. So if we have enough people uh, donating, then it becomes an automatic process. So we just do both ways. The donor is there, we know the area, the donor is in Bandra, the patient is in Bandra, match the two, and it gets done.
Beautiful. Ma'am, just I think a quick 2 or 3 questions on that. One, any special care to be taken after plasma donation?
After plasma donation, basically just have okay. So one of the reasons, this is a very thing. One of the reasons one of our donors was rejected, at least for that time, was because he had been drinking the night before. So don't drink and go.
Correct.
No, nothing. Just have a protein-rich diet. Post that, because your serum proteins have been taken out, they need to be replaced, and that's it. I mean, don't drive maybe after the plasma donation.
Right, absolutely.
Something, and in fact, most blood banks now offer transport also, so it should not be an
great.
issue at all.
Nice. Another question is, how early after getting infected by COVID can plasma donation be done?
28 days after recovery.
No.
Okay.
I think this is for a person who is infected should be.
Yeah.
I think that's the question, right?
No, you're talking about the patient or
Yeah,
the donor?
patient.
Yeah, I think to administer.
No. To donate only.
Yeah,
The
to
question
donate.
is,
Yeah,
so
that's
she said
28.
28 days after recovery.
That's correct.
After recovery. After
Okay.
recovery.
Mhm.
Right? So it's 28 days after recovery, or they say uh, 15 days after a negative COVID report.
Okay.
So if that is done, if not, then just 28 days post recovery.
I think another question, ma'am, which is I think circulating is still, is there a chance of reoccurrence even after plasma? I think that's something which still is work in progress, right?
Reoccurrence after in the donor, you mean?
No.
Reinfection?
After, like, if I'm
The
a patient
recipient.
and I received
Mhm.
plasma as
Yeah.
and I recovered, then can I
Yeah.
again get reinfected?
See, reinfection of COVID is still very dicey because this is a very, very new thing which has
Exactly.
come. We don't have any answers. But there are news articles now of patients having been reinfected. This is not nothing to do with plasma, but they have recovered from COVID and they have been reinfected. So I think there were two doctors in Nair Hospital, 2 healthcare workers, and somewhere else. But it's not come up on such a huge scale as which would have been expected if this was a common recurrence. It's like if you get the common cold, you can get it every few months. But we've had so many cases of COVID. So it's not as if out of the lakhs, we've had thousands who are getting COVID again.
Yeah.
So maybe that the future will tell. We don't know. Maybe next year we will know whether these people, maybe the antibodies are still very effective for so many months.
So
there are no answers.
Correct, no problem.
So one question is,
So how
long can plasma be stored?
No,
In the blood.
Yes. Yeah, sure. You can go for this one. We've got one more.
Yeah. So plasma can be stored for up to a year in the blood bank.
Wow.
It's frozen. It can be stored for a year, and outside of the blood bank for about 4 hours till it, if it needs to be transported from one place to the other.
Sure. And just a quick, I think your Vani has already answered this question, but how does plasma specifically reduce COVID symptoms?
Because you're putting the antibodies into the patient, right? So specifically, it's not a 1, 2, 3 thing, that it's an antiviral or it acts against the fibrosis in the lungs or something like that. It just helps boost the immunity of the body.
Absolutely. Great.
Right.
Perfect.
I think Vani was speaking very well. What were you saying, Vani, about it?
Yeah, the same thing that you mentioned, ma'am. It just accelerates the immunity process,
Immune
you know.
response.
Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah, I think one very pertinent question is, why should a woman not have given birth? To like that's like a major disqualifier, and I think I've got a private question from one of our listeners.
Yeah. So when during birth, there are some antibodies which pass over from the father to the mother, right? These are the HLA antibodies, and if it has an effect, it has an effect on the respiratory system. And as COVID primarily attacks the respiratory system, and we have this, it can lead to a worsening of the disease. So we cannot have that.
Perfect.
I didn't know that. That's news to me. Thanks for sharing. I think a
Yeah.
lot of information you shared.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this has been new to us, so we are so glad to have you with us over here.
I'm so glad to
this could
have
enhance.
had this opportunity to talk to you guys.
No, it's absolutely enlightening, because a lot of questions, we have, so many of us have had, and I've got a lot of questions about plasma donation specifically from friends and patients. So it's very
I
useful.
think, no one better than you at this point.
Yeah,
definitely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
And
much.
Please do reach out at any other time also if you need any other help.
Sure.
Any questions to be asked, or if answered, or if anything else, if we can spread the word any other way also.
Sure,
Please,
absolutely.
let's work together with this.
Definitely.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
If there are any questions after you leave, we'll pass them over to you and get them answered. Thank you so much. Yeah, we won't.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. You can drop off.
Thank you.
So much. Have a nice day, ma'am. Thank you.
You too.
So, yeah, thank you everyone for your questions. You have made this session absolutely electric. Thank you so much again. What we'll quickly cover, I think, which Vani wanted to cover was, how are you actually helping treat patients in the COVID, wards or center? That was the point, right?
Yes,
Vani?
that is something. Yeah. So, I mean, I think a notion amongst people is that, once you enter a COVID facility, it's like jail mein aa gaye ho. It is not like that. I mean, it's a hospital, agreed. I mean, no one likes to go to a hospital as a patient. But so what do these facilities do? Okay, so once you're there, of course, the sad part about this particular disease is you're going to be away from your family because you don't want to risk them. So once you enter, so we have a triage or a casualty area like many other hospitals have. So where detailed history is taken, and till that entrance point, your relative can be there with you. There's a registration procedure which is done by the BMC. They have a standard protocol to go about it, where your details are taken. And after that, that's when you go alone inside and leave your family members behind. It can be scary, but then that's why we are there for you. Even though we are all donned in PPEs and we look like aliens, but beneath there we are also, we are there. We are there for not only your medical support, but also for your emotional and physical support. So once someone does come in, a detailed evaluation is done for that person. Basic blood tests which are required are done. We do a chest X-ray and an ECG just to know a baseline parameter of your system. And then we see whether you're already been tested outside or not, and accordingly you are transferred into the respective ward of a suspect or a confirmed case. Your saturation is seen along with your other vitals. If you require oxygen support, then you go to an oxygen ward. So, Shruti, would you like to continue after this? What happens once you go to the ward?
Where were you working?
Sure.
Yeah.
So at the triage or the observation area, we decide based on your oxygen level whether you need to go to an oxygenated ward, like Dr. Vani said. And if you are stable, you will be admitted into a non-oxygenated ward where there are more stable patients. And if a patient needs ICU setup, then we transfer them to a higher center with ICU setup. Now, in the ward, there is a constant monitoring of vitals like blood pressure, temperature, pulse rate, and oxygen saturation, SpO2, done by nurses and by doctors constantly round the clock. Then the doctors, basically what we have to do there is to check the investigations that are done if anything needs to be repeated, if anything needs to be attended to, all those patients who are previously hypertensive or diabetic or have old medicines going on, chronic medicines going on, we have to ensure that those medicines are being taken. So the nurses and the doctors together work on this. There are patients who also need to be counseled because they don't have awareness. So that is also done by doctors every day on a daily basis. And we do, I mean, we, like Pani was saying, through that PPE, which looks horrid, through that we are also human beings, and there are really patients who need to reach out to their relatives, and they're old and they probably don't know how to use a phone, they don't have a phone on them, and we see that they are connected to their relatives, and we try and do as much as possible. Everyone together works together on this. So that's about the treatment part. Treatment is basically symptomatic. There are a group of consultants who are constantly taking decisions for each patient, like Dr. Vani. So we are in touch with them constantly on the phone, and they also take rounds in the wards. And so in the oxygenated wards have lesser patients in each ward, so that there is close monitoring of those patients, because they need that kind of attention. And then if there is any need or any kind of further close monitoring, then they are shifted to the observation area, where there is much more like a CPAP, BiPAP, all different kinds of higher technological equipment that is available and is provided. So that's basically it, right? Vani, anything
Yes,
else?
we have a team of doctors. We have various kind of doctors, each from a different specialty. So since COVID is new to everyone, whatever kind of doctor you were in pre-COVID era, right now we are all treating the same thing. So this is all based on protocols. So I am often asked, and I think so is Shruti, that as an ENT surgeon or as a homeopath, how are you able to contribute to this? So this is new to everyone. We follow protocols, we use our clinical judgment, and we are able to help patients. So in our team of consultants, we have consultants from various facilities. So if a patient needs a cardiology help, we have a cardiologist in our team. So that pertains to most of the centers. We usually have a pediatrician. We have pediatric wards to take care of kids, and we make sure that the mothers are with the kids, because bottom line, you cannot forget the social part of this, just when someone enters, that person is not just a patient, that person is a person also. So I think those are the aspects. And I mean, if we talk about the emotional stories that we have seen, it's gonna be another long chapter. But yeah. So Shruti, I want to ask you. So you have been inside in PP for those whole 6 hour stretch. I mean, as a consultant, I just go for rounds, which goes for maybe 2 hours, and rest of the time we are helping and we are doing more of virtual stuff. So how was your experience in those 6 hours of being in the PPE?
Right. So just to give you a brief description of how the PP, the entire process is. Once we enter the center, we change into scrubs first. Scrubs are those, in the operation theaters, they wear those pants and shirts. So we first change into that. And then we go into the donning area. Donning area is where we put on the PPE. And this is what you're seeing on the screen is a PPE. So it has, first we wear a same looking, same material foot gear. Then we wear our gloves, first layer of gloves. At every step, we sanitize our hands and gloves, even if in the gloves. After we wear the foot gear, we wear our gloves, and then we wear our jumpsuit. The entire jumpsuit is one piece. So we wear it from our legs and put it on up, put the hood, and put the hood last. Then there's a zip here, and then the second layer of gloves, so that it's completely sealed and there's no breach. If you can see in one of these also, they have put a micro tape between the gloves and the PP, so that there's no breach of
basically no skin
exposure. Right. And then we wear, so I used to wear my my glasses,
and which are 6 numbered glasses.
And on top of that, goggles, or you can wear a face shield, that also they provide. And then we cover the hood completely, and as you can see, it's completely covered till here. Only the eyes are seen
with the mask.
Yeah, there's a double layer of mask also that we wear. and then this completely covered, no skin nowhere should be basically exposed. Now, once we enter here, this is in this attire, in this costume, in this uniform, we are in it for 6 hours, which means we cannot breach this PP. You cannot, to maintain its sanctity or the sanitization thing. It is, you cannot, no input, no output. You cannot drink water, you cannot sip water, you cannot eat anything, you cannot munch on anything, and you cannot go to urinate as well. If you do need to go urgently, you have to just go, finish, doff and read on a new PP, obviously, and then come in. So that was the entire process. I think the first day was very interesting, very nice, because I couldn't hear much. The most important thing is you can't hear, and I learned to increase my volume, my voice volume the entire time there, because there's no AC inside, so as to prevent infections from spreading. You really can't hear. There's a lot of sound of the fan because each patient has one pedestal fan. Because it can really get hot, and the nursing station where the doctors sit, also there is a cooler and there's a fan. So basically you can't hear much because the fan is constantly on. So you have
I think we lose all our senses. You can't touch with those 3-layered gloves. You can, of course, smell. You barely can see. To be frank, it took me a few days to get used to having a narrow field of vision with the goggles and face shield. You can't move around. I remember first day having bumped to the walls of the center as well, because like, okay, it's like your first day of driving where you have to learn how the width of the place, and so it takes a lot of time to get accustomed to
amazingly. That's the level of sacrifice of hundreds and hundreds of doctors, not only across the city, but in every city across the world, who are wearing PPs daily and going for war against this virus. Absolutely beautiful. And I think kudos from all of us here to you and to the entire team who has done this absolutely selflessly. Just beautiful. I think there was one question from one person. Sorry about that.
Have symptoms.
No. I think it's, if you're not sneezing, or you're not sneezing or coughing, then you're not kind of, removing droplets,
There's no aerosol. So how are we going to be spreading the infection? I think you want to take that hand.
Yeah, sure. So, unlike the common flu, which I could be in the same household with 4 other people and they wouldn't have it, but COVID somehow spreads very rapid. So even if you do not sneeze or you don't have cough or anything, so those mild symptoms, there are still even the expiration and inspiration, the respiration process per se, we do emit air. So that virus is so small that even that air contains it. And, being mild case, you could be asymptomatic, but for the well-being of your family, there's always, that precautionary measure, extra precaution, better safe than sorry. So I think that's the logic behind it.
Beautiful. So another question for both of you, I think something which has come from us is there a stigma to it? Right? I think many people whom I have spoken to from a coaching perspective, many people feel that there's something dirty about it. Societies don't treat the house, jidhar bahar chapa laga tha, that house gets that, are baap re, isme kuch, hua tha, kind of scandalous. So what's your view on this? You're treating hundreds of people every day, and you see the human side of them. So what's your view of the stigma which is out there, and what will help people get rid of the stigma?
I think one of the main idea behind this activity today was, to spread general awareness and directly and indirectly just reducing the stigma. I mean, it's there, it's out there. Everyone's, dealing with it, but I don't think one should fear it. One should have wrong notions about it. And this is not that achut ka bimari, So, I mean, Shruti, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, exactly. So it's not something that we have to be embarrassed about. It is not something that happens to only certain class of people or a certain clan of people. It is a virus that cannot be seen, that's intangible, and that is making it the most mysterious. And that it has affected everyone and anyone without any kind of differentiation. So
the richest footballers, the poorest of the
Absolutely.
poor in Dharavi, everyone's been testing positive, right?
Exactly.
It's a virus which has been like a leveler for everyone.
Yes, absolutely. And so that is why there is nothing to feel that if I get positive, oh my God, it's going to be what we are trying to do. Our best is if anyone we know is tested positive, we try to help them in every way possible. If they are in our vicinity, we try to give them, help
Groceries.
them in whatever way, groceries, buy them their stuff, and do it in a way that we know has helped. See, the fact that we both did our swab test and we tested negative, that gave us some confidence that what measures we were taking while in front of hundreds of COVID positive patients. That means we have done the right steps, we have taken precautions in the right way. So that means we have to just follow that smartly, and we will be safe. So to help someone who is COVID positive in a smart, informed way is very important, I think.
And I don't see, but that does not also mean, again, just I'm being a devil's advocate here. That doesn't mean that you guys need to be in PPEs all the way, right? Because it was that PPE which kind of saved you, with them as confirmed hundreds of them positive. But I think that also should answer the question which was asked, that now that cases are rising, what are the general precautions? That, mask all the time. Those are those basic ones which have to be kept on, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, even when this COVID started, I was in States at that time. So me and my sister, we wanted to buy, we didn't have masks at home. We thought we should just have at least 2-3 masks each. And they were, the prices had hiked. They were not available on Amazon or any other site. And then, we saw YouTube videos on how to stitch our own mask. And I'm like, yeah, come on, this is ridiculous. So finally, we did end up buying cloth masks. So when you're not a medical personnel, when you're not dealing with COVID confirmed cases on a day-to-day basis, you can just wear a comfortable cotton mask. And I think we all really advocated, because you can just wash them at home. Have 2 per person, more than enough. Wash them at home, reuse them. It's those N95 and those really uncomfortable masks. They are not comfortable. It takes you days to get used to it. By the end of it, you have marks and all that stuff. So let the people who are dealing with that in a medical profession use them. So I think all those precautions do help. So let's keep it basic. You don't have to overdo things. You don't have to keep washing your hands when you enter your house. Wash your hands. You don't have to keep overdoing things also. So whole thing is ki abhi this is a part of your routine life for the few more weeks or months to come. So let's deal with it in a positive way. And I think we were discussing, me and Shruti, on, what have we been doing to keep our positive mindset, So Shruti, what have you been doing to keep yourself positive?
Right. So that's what the most important thing, I think, in this entire piece is to choose the middle path. Like Vani was saying, don't go extreme, don't go careless, or don't be extra precautious. And second, the most important thing is to keep your immunity high. And what are the things can keep your immunity high are several things that you can see on the screen. One is your physical health. Take care of your physical health. Take your medicines, whether that is allopathic, homeopathic, Ayurvedic, whatever. What is that called? Ancillary mode of treatment. Yoga is very, very helpful. Any kind of walking, simple exercises at home, whatever suits you, whatever you enjoy is very important to continue doing every day for at least 30 minutes. Okay, mental health.
One second, sorry, on the physical health, also supplements, right?
Yes, supplements, vitamin C,
vitamin D
of only 4 weeks is enough, of 60,000 units. Uprise D3 you get, that is something that everyone can take safely. Do not overdo on vitamin D, because excess can cause intoxication as well. So vitamin D, B complex, and vitamin C. Now, zinc can be taken by majorly the older people, not necessarily older means above 60, not necessarily by everyone. Unless you have symptoms, then you can add that up as well. Those are about supplements. Then there is
home cooked food and a lot of water. I mean, I think I always advocate drinking a lot of water. 2 to 3 liters a day is, as an ENT, there you go, here I have mine as well. As an ENT and as a laryngologist, water is my solution to most of the problem, and so does it hold true for COVID. I think fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and just home food does the trick for most of the things, right? So
Correct.
yes, Shruti, do
Absolutely.
continue. Yeah.
Right. And then homeopathic medicines, what we have been seeing, what from my experience has been seeing that it is helping to keep our immunities at an optimal level, helping to reduce severities of symptoms. Even if you've got any acute symptom, in spite of having comorbidities, I've seen people recovering from these seasonal colds, coughs, or whatever faster.
And yeah, and I think at one point of time we were kind of fortunate to have distributed around, I think, 18,000 bottles of arsenic album 30, which was the medicine which was prescribed by Ayush. That is not a medicine, I think, which is going to prevent you from getting the virus, but
it helps in building your immunity against the virus from the studies that have been seen.
And again, we can offer that to anyone.
Yeah, and that's absolutely available if anyone needs that. Please, for free. There is no charge to this. This is absolutely available with us, and you can contact any homeopath for that matter. Also, we are able to give it anywhere within India right now. So that's about the physical health. Going to mental health, unsubscribe to WhatsApp University, unsubscribe from WhatsApp University. Do not believe in everything you read. Do not read things that are negative. It is not going to help you. If you want to know the truth, just contact a doctor whom you believe in. Vani and we are absolutely available for that. Vani is running very hectic schedules with the duty right now also currently, but she's always available. I am also always available on WhatsApp all the while. And we can also connect you with the person who can help you better at that. So on that front, we are available, but keep your anxiety at bay. Do things that help you, keep you calm, creativity, your hobbies. So that's coming to that. We try to use a lot of music. Vani is an artist, so she keeps, you're sharing the screen. So she keeps drawing, and she's also a plant lover, and she's doing a lot of positive work there, and you can share that as well, Vani. I'll just finish this.
Yeah.
Spiritual health, keeping basically doing things that will help people who are in need. I think that's the one action oriented spirituality we are trying to follow right now in this.
Yeah, we started feeding cats from day 2 of lockdown. That's March 22nd or 23rd. Because we realized that nobody wanted to feed pets, because at that point of time the rumor was that pets were causing COVID, and people were like abandoning beautiful kittens and cats on the road. So we did that. We were feeding around 25 cats every morning, and still that's an activity which we continue. So something which you can make a difference to someone else in a very safe manner.
Right. And then going to love, family, friends, your networks, relationships, keeping in touch with your loved ones is very important. We are using this the virtual world in video calling people who may not. I mean, I've video called people whom I've never spoken to before also, but just to find out how they're doing. So please do that. And then coming to profession, keeping yourself engaged in your profession. So basically maintaining a balance in all these aspects in one day helps you, keep your immunity high and keeps you happy. Vani, you can please share the way you have been.
Yeah, so I think when the lockdown began, so I mean, being away from home, it's been quite a while since I've met my family. My parents are down south and I'm in Mumbai. So yes, internet helps my friend right now. We video call on a very regular basis. My sister is all the way in States. So when this started, we started, I mean, we needed to engage ourselves in a very productive manner. So you do get bored of doing the same old household chores, how much will you possibly cook? And, you do get bored of doing indoor workouts. You need fresh air. So if you're lucky enough to be in maybe lesser congested areas, you can go for a walk safely or go for early morning walks. And that's what we started to do. And luckily it was springtime. and a lot of flowers blossoming around us. So we started this activity of reading about those flowers, appreciating them, the colors, and being an artist, I would paint them also. So anything and everything which will keep you positive. So I mean, you could just be lying around on your couch and watch Netflix, you know, anything which gives you happiness, as long as you are relaxed mentally and keep yourself fit physically. So I think we tried for a lot of activities, and the idea is not to just keep ourselves positive, but spread it among. So we became very active on Instagram, for instance, you know. So I think these are small things can be done. And I've been approached by a few people if I could take online art classes, painting classes for the children to engage
Wow.
them. So that is something which I'll be starting shortly as well. You know, just to engage people in something to keep their mind going. And
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Mani, there's one question I think about
uh-huh.
what are your home isolation standardized,
What is the standardization for sending asymptomatic COVID patient
or just basically
back?
Hmm.
what's the home isolation protocol? You can maybe just
Yeah.
help them out because many
Yeah.
people would have that as a question.
Yeah, so being a mild case, you don't have to be admitted in a hospital to begin with. If you have a room in your house which has probably a attached toilet bath, then you can be isolated over there. What happens in cities, congested cities like Mumbai, especially, people don't really have that extra room, you know. So in that case, we have facilities which are isolation facilities. Some of the companies are also providing hotels. There are a lot of hotels across, a lot of 5-star, 3-star, which have subsidized their rates to provide for isolation. But let's say a common scenario, you are at home, you have a room to yourself. So of course, it's a good positive environment being at home, comfortable, you get home food. So it's a little sad because you might not be able to see your other members of your family on a daily basis, but you know, maintain your personal hygiene, keep yourself mentally relaxed, and that will do the trick. I mean, there's nothing, as I said, this is not achut ki bimari, you know. You can communicate with them, maybe like someone, this is a very commonly asked question. Once the patient gets discharged, can I talk to my relative? Can I open the door to give food to them? Yes, you can do all that. Wear mask, let the person suffering from COVID also wear a mask, and those few minutes of interaction is not gonna do you any harm. So I
Yes,
think
stay 6
that's
feet,
about it.
Yeah.
keep a
Keep
6
some
feet.
safe distance. Yeah.
Beautiful.
There was one more question I got about
Yeah.
is it safe for 60 plus years of age people to travel?
Yeah.
So,
Any?
right.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I think traveling part is, you know, if you absolutely need to do it, just take the precautions and go about it. I mean, I don't think I would say do not move out of your home. It's not possible. It's been months now. But take adequate precautions, and I think that's good enough.
Right. And it's a very subjective thing based on
Yeah.
this as well, right? The symptoms. If the person is having comorbidities and symptoms, then you have to avoid it. But
Avoid it.
otherwise, there's no problem.
Perfect. I think just we'll quickly, I think we've got 10-15 minutes. We have kept all of you for a very long time. So we'll just open up for questions. And if anyone wishes to drop off your dinners, your evening time, we don't want to take it from you. Please feel free to drop off if you don't have any other questions and you've heard enough. But I think we've just got a question. Can corona attack a person again who has recovered from it? I think we have discussed that. Yes, it's happening, but still, you know, this is a very, very early stage of virus study. So yes, we are getting there. But as of the current information, yes, it is possible. Next question. Once a vaccine is released, how accessible will it be to the developed and developing worlds? I think I'll take that. We had this as a part of a discussion at a corporate level, because, you know, we were also looking at it because we are a 15,000 strong company. So in case something like this were to happen, so how would it be released? And I think our head of HR has gone through and spoken to quite a few senior people that it will go in a phased manner based on the need. So I think the first and the most important people who will need it are people on the front line. And there are two major people on the front line. One is the army and one is the army of medical people, right? Then to the most serious patients, and slowly, you know, it will be brought down. From what understanding I have, I think one of the largest makers of vaccines in the world is the Serum Institute, which is an Indian organization, which was, I think, a few months ago saying that they will try to make it as inexpensive as possible. And also through the World Health Organization, all research globally anyone developing the vaccine, it will not be restricted to a certain country or a continent, but that knowledge will be spread across, and surely it will come to India, because the Serum Institute, which produces these vaccines, is an India-based thing. So we will surely ensure that India gets it, and globally also, I'm sure there will be no distinguishing or discrimination. It's a global portion of this.
Sorry. So
Yes.
there's a question of, if somebody is having a psychological disorder as a comorbidity, what is the steps taken at the center? So there is a ward dedicated for people with psychological disorders, right, Vani?
Yes,
So
yes,
that
we
there-
have people who are both physically and mentally disabled. So we have special caretakers for them. And fortunately for us, we have a psychiatrist in our team as well, who can, give her expert opinion to these people. Yeah.
Beautiful. What is height? What is the
dosage will not-
HCQ?
HCQ. What's the dosage of HCQ for children and adults, and can it have adverse effects?
I
I
think
think we'll take that offline,
Dr. Namrata,
Dr. Namrata. That's a more
specific question.
medicine based. We're hearing about the virus being air transmitted. How far this is true, and what are the precautions? So no, it is not airborne yet. I mean, it is not airborne. So it does not. If I'm just it does not transmit just by the air, but by aerosols of the breath we breathe. Droplet infection, aerosols. But not by just air.
Not in normal air.
Normal air, by just breathing into normal air.
I think that's where I think AC has a slightly higher risk, right? If I'm
right, yeah, the same thing, because then it can transfer the same
air recirculation. So fresh air, I don't think you should have an issue if you have the right distance and the masks and prevention.
So patients who are recovered, are they coming back with other medical problems?
Other medical problems.
I have not seen that, but it could be just in case of severe infections. People who are having severe infections, lung infections, they can have some consequences where there could be some kind of fibrosis or those kind of this, that is in the most severe case. In other cases, what we are just seeing majorly is fatigue, which takes between 1 week to 1 month to recover based on each person's health, physique and immunity. Apart from that, just I think anything else, Vani?
Yeah, so the virus per se attacks on some particular cells which are present primarily in the lung in the body, but they're also present in various other parts of the body. So there are some derangements seen in the overall functionality of the body, but thankfully not to a very severe extent. And that is why we have regular tests being performed and regular imaging being done for the patients to keep a track of it and treat it accordingly.
Excellent. One question is, I think, is that the virus remains in the throat and then steaming and hot water prevents it from entering the body?
No.
So, I mean, this has very mixed opinions. So, to be frank, I mean, if it steam, there are few articles. I don't know how, how appropriate they are, but they do say that steaming does inactivate the virus. Also, bottom line, being ENT, I would say steaming helps in humidifying your airway. So when anything is humidified, the cilia of your nose and nasopharynx, they are more active, and so they are just keeping it humidified. So if it helps, to one extent, then why not use it? But I wouldn't say it's a foolproof mechanism to not have virus enter your respiratory system.
It's a supportive
measure.
It's not something that is going to kill the virus just by steaming. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And any diagnostic text, I think we already discovered.
We have. You can just message us. We can share the recording with you if you need. Whoever's asked the question about SL. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think we don't have any questions. Last, I think otherwise you can feel free to drop off. I think that's what we have from our end. Any questions? Thank you for your feedback, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the active participation. I think that has helped us a lot.
I think there is a question which I can see, does MMR vaccine help? So MMR vaccine is mumps, measles, rubella. So these are also viruses. So there's no foolproof study which says that this vaccine will help. Similarly, even the influenza shot doesn't really help in COVID. So I would say my answer would be no, that these vaccines do not help.
Anyone else?
Are we planning to repeat this session? I think beautiful question. So yeah, we would be happy, to do it in case there is a need and specific audiences need it. We have been trying to organize this session for the last 2 weeks, and this is the response that we got: 65 people. Thank you all for your time. But in case there is a set of people who are interested, very happy to do it. One question: have we really hit the peak of cases? We were told that post September the cases would start dropping. Is it true? I think this is more of a statistical question, more than anything. I think it is related to various areas. One is the economy, how that unlocks. How do people's mindsets, towards the entire structure move to? How careful are we? How are we continuing? So I think there are multiple factors to it. And means there was a point that there was a WhatsApp university chat going on that after the solar eclipse, it would not happen. After the equinox, it would change. After the summer solstice, it would change. And I think we need to know that there are multiple reasons for this. There is people's mindsets. There's a physical reason. There's also, I think the virus has stayed as it is. I think people's and the economy's unlocking is what is causing it. So I don't think we can say specifically that September or October is going to be the change. We have to just continue living our lives in the same structured, safe way until we get vaccinated. Let's not try to look at statistics about number of cases, number of recoveries. Focus on yourself, focus on being happy, follow physical, mental and spiritual fitness, and I think you should be fine. Yeah.
I think that's pretty much the summary of what our aim for this session was.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so there is a question: how do we thank the doctors who have been continuously working? So I think you can thank us in the best way by taking precautions for yourself and your family. No matter how much we love our patients, we would rather not have you at our COVID center and meet you in a social gathering rather than in a hospital. So you take care of yourself, and that's the best way of thanking us, I think.
Yeah. And Mr. Jose Matthew, I think you're asking statistical questions across the country. Unfortunately, we aren't. This is something which even I would pick up from a newspaper or from something like National Geographic. And I know that every newspaper is publishing something different. There is no such statistics which are being tracked from the COVID centers. We are dealing with specific patient-related issues and focusing on the virus majorly in this call. I think this is something for I think this is something which even this ICMR or someone can answer this. Unfortunately, we don't have the answers to questions about herd immunity and percentage of population being infected.
I think it's very important if you have got COVID and you're now recovered, it's very important to keep the positive effect going and help people and who are now tested positive or who have the anxiety to allay their anxieties and to share it with them, because so that people feel okay, yeah, it's not just me, and we're all of us in the same boat. And that positive thing is very important as part of gratitude to doctors, like you were saying. It's very important to keep the positivity going. I think that's most important
for across your society.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just let people. Yeah, please.
Yeah. A conversation I had recently with a colleague off the charts, without a scientific basis to it, is that we do not work in the ICU setup, me and Shruti, but this particular person does, and he felt that patients who have that high anxiety levels and their prognosis worsens. So basically, the kind of effect the virus has on your body, it increases some particular enzymes and chemicals in your body, and the anxiety portion also does the same. So this doesn't have a scientific basis. This is a personal experience from a fellow colleague. So yes, and just pertain to, reduce your stress, anxiety.
Absolutely.
That will help. Yeah.
And actually, exercising scientifically helps improve your immunity because it stimulates your body's immune system. So that is something that you should proactively be doing.
And if anyone wants exercises, also we personally have been doing simple exercises from YouTube, which even if you're living in apartments, you don't need to disturb anyone. You can do them low impact. Don't even need yoga mats. Nothing. Please reach out to us, and you can get fitter and happier. So please, the most important thing is be mentally fine, and we are here for you for anything of that. Just a question: is there an effect from immune system overdrive that causes severe symptoms or spiral out of control?
Is there an effect of immune system overdrive that causes severe symptoms? No, it's
I
not.
think there's something like autoimmunity that this person's talking about, or like overdrive of immune system. So, I mean, not really. I mean, your immune system is helping you. As I said, virus causes a inflammatory reaction, which increases cytokines, which are the chemicals I was talking about, which is what causes the symptoms. So, it's the initial viral phase, and then it's the inflammatory phase, and it's not that immunity phase that I think you have mentioned.
Perfect. Cool. I think we've reached our
Yeah.
time deadline. It's
Yes,
8:30
definitely.
and
Yeah.
we've got Vani has to go back to duty tomorrow. So
Yeah.
thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. I think the
Yeah.
questions, your questions were
Yeah.
beautiful, pertinent, very nicely asked. Thank you all for remaining on mute. I think the most disciplined and clean session I've ever had. So kudos to all of you. Thank you for attending. And yeah, you are all brilliant. And trust me, I think the biggest gift that you could do to these two doctors was by attending the session and being so patient and listening them out. So thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. And you can any day contact us on our numbers separately if there are more questions. I know we can't cover all of it. Again, thank you, everyone. Have a nice day and take care. Thank you so much. Good evening. We'll end the session in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You can drop off.
Okay.
Thank you, Vani.
Thanks, Shruti. It was a really great experience. Thanks to you and Akshay.
Thank you.
Nice to having, a platform to voice out your experience and opinions. So
Absolutely.
that if it can, even help one person, it's worth it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, everyone, for having been part of it. Brilliant. Yeah, you can please drop off
Yeah.
as you feel free. We'll end
We are
the session.
closing.
Yeah, we are closing in 30 seconds. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Aarti. Take care.
You
Keep
too.
smiling.
Surely.
Excellent. Very happy to see you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.